Who's he?
Kentman!
He's not important!
Okay. Hello, gamers and collectors. It's your boy Kentman, and today we are going to be diving into all the new news and interviews that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and just Final Fantasy in general is having. It came out with some new financial reports that it's not performing as well as they expected, which, you know, we all know that Square Enix has very high expectations for games, even though they are doing well in some senses of the word. And also we're going to talk about some Kingdom Hearts news as well. Not really news, but like a statement that Nomura has talked about. And you know, I think we should just dive in it. I'm a little worried about what it's going to say. I kind of heard some things about it, so I don't think I need to be worrying too much. But whenever it comes about Final Fantasy VII, which is my favorite game, by the way, I get a little bit of, are they going to like pull the rug on Final Fantasy VII? Which I don't think they'll actually do that, because we're so close and it would really upset a lot of people at this point. And I think that money's already paid for the trilogy. So I don't know. Let's read first and then we'll talk about it. There's a lot of new interviews coming out for Rebirth and the future of the franchise that, you know, the developers wants to try new things in hopes not to make the same game and to make it more fresher for newer fans, but also familiarize for people who has played the original games, as it's going to follow some of the same story beats, but with some added things that they wasn't able to do before. And there's an article from Genkai that was translated from the interview that they had, and it says Final Fantasy VII Rebirth battle director Takeruki Endo says that they want to allow more freedom and evolve the battle system in part 3. Evolve the battle system in part 3 of Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy. And I love that. I love the idea of freedom. The one thing I love the most about a JRPG or just an RPG is the amount of freedom and possibilities that you're able to do within a game. I recently played Visions of Mana, and that game felt like there was no limits on what you can do, what you can see, where you can go, and seeing the vast lands of the different horizons and different landscapes that they made is something I just enjoy so much. I gushed so hard over all the bitter details that they made for the game because it just looks so gorgeous. And Rebirth is one of those games that also is very beautiful. And I think Rebirth itself did capture the essence of moving around freely within the game, but I feels like they're going to improve it more so for the third game, and I'm super excited for that. I believe that I think that instead of the developers or creators dictating how the players should play along a pre-planned path, so to speak, it's better to allow more freedom in the user's choice to be able to play in their own way they wish to. My thoughts are also that for the Final Fantasy series to continue revenerating itself and revitalize itself and stay fresh to our players, the type of consistent evolution is necessary in terms of the battle elements as well. And I just love that they're always trying to evolve and trying to do new things with the franchise and with the synchro system that they had with Rebirth, which is the main big feature of the game. I'm assuming that they're going to improve it or do something different in the game, but not too much that is too unfamiliar with the first game in the second game, because like even when it came to the second game, there was a lot of new features with a lot of the synchro moves and syncing up with a lot of people and working as a team. And I'm assuming because this game, the third game, is going to have a lot of new characters that you can play with, Vincent and Sid, and they're going to have the full roster of characters, and plus with Zack in there as well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more things that they're going to have to come up with to make it more fresh, that it doesn't feel like the same game, but nothing too crazy from what we already played. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that has to offer. But I'm very excited for the third trilogy. Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorite games of all time, and I am truly looking forward to playing the third part of when it comes out. With some more news about Final Fantasy VII in 16, this is kind of a sad news about this topic a little bit, is that these two games underperformed. It did not meet the expectations of Square Enix, which, to digress, Square Enix sometimes has very outlandish expectations for certain games. You know, I feels like a game that reaches $3 million or somewhere close to that is a pretty success. That's more money than I can ever make in a year. So the fact that that is low expectations for them is odd. Now, I feels like the most part is that they are matching the expectations of a great successful game of Remake Part 1, which again was during COVID, so a lot of people was inside, was able to play the game, so a lot more people had a lot more free time to play Final Fantasy Remake. Plus, it was one of those games that the first game was the first remake in a long running series that we've been wanting for a long time, so the hype was there for a while. So it makes sense that the game sold really well. And I feels like the second game took kind of long for it to come out, so a lot of people kind of forgot about it or didn't care anymore about the story because, you know, not a lot of people are inside nowadays, and only the true core Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy people are going to play it. And the fact that it is only on, you know, was on PlayStation, is not able to be on PC just yet, so maybe in the future it will change. And that's mostly what this article is about. Square Enix has admitted that profits of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Final Fantasy XVI did not meet expectations. The comments comes from the financial results briefing held in May and finally made public today. Square Enix presents Takashi Kiryu shared the results, stating, in the HD Games sub-segment, we released multiple new titles, including major titles such as Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but profits unfortunately did not meet expectations. Now, I can only speak from the side of Rebirth. I thought that game was phenomenal. It was my favorite game of the entire year. Everything about it was absolutely perfect. Obviously, everything wasn't perfect, but as my favorite game, I'm kind of biased to that game, so I enjoyed everything. Sure, there could have been a lot more things that they could have tightened up, like with Kate Sif's throwing animation and how he played, and then there was the Chocobo flying animations, and riding was not all that fun to do, and a couple other like mini games that could have been, you know, polished up. But regardless of the story and the characters and the fighting, everything else was so good. And the horizons, the set pieces, beautiful, absolutely amazing. And I wouldn't want them to change that at all. But when it comes to 16, I didn't play it because I didn't really like the appeal of the game. I didn't like the direction they took with it. The action was fun. I did play the demo, but I didn't play the full release, so I can't really speak on how good it was. I only can know by what people have said, and from what I've heard and seen, that it is a really good game. And you know, this game hit a $3 million budget. I mean, a $3 million sales margin. So I feels like that's a pretty good, you know, success game in my opinion. Again, we don't know what the true number is for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth because they didn't acknowledge that. They haven't said about that information yet. So it's going to be, I guess they're going to wait until the PC version comes out before they do release that information. But regardless, further, he stated initial sales for phone stores. I'm not surprised that didn't sell well. No one was really asking for that game, or I kind of completely forgot that it came out. I don't even know if it's still in service anymore. That was an odd game that they put out. It just didn't seem like a Square Enix type game. I was more surprised that it was a Square Enix game, so I'm not really surprised that the game didn't do well. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth released in Q4 of the last financial year, were not as strong as expected. It is possible to note that these comments were made in May at the same time that Square Enix announced it was aggressively pursuing a multi-platinum strategy. Shortly after reporting, it laid off a number of employees in the US and European offices emerged, which is a big thing that's happening right now. And it sucks that is happening. at this point in time, Final Fantasy 16 has been out for a year and Final Fantasy Rebirth has been out for less than 3 months. Still, there hasn't been a speculation around the sales of Final Fantasy Rebirth. It is reported underperformance according to the industry analysis, which I don't know. It is sad that the game is underperforming as they say, but in my opinion, I feels like that game did amazing. Everyone was playing it. There were so many people's reactions to playing it and so many playthroughs of playing it. I mean, I went back to get some B-roll of me playing it for another video, and oh my goodness, I could play that all over again. And like, not that I will buy a PlayStation Pro just to play Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth on that, even though I really do want to. That game looks so gorgeous. That game was so amazing. So it is very shocking to know that it didn't sell so well. But maybe because it was only on PlayStation, it suffered. And most people probably wanted to play it on PC or other consoles. And I feels like that would have helped. And maybe down the line, it will get better numbers when it is released on other platforms. We'll see. Sales tracking from Serena previously stated Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the 4th top selling game in the US, but remains far behind sales of previous entries of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I've already explained that we were in a pandemic, more people were inside to be able to play more video games. So I feels like them based in that knowledge off a remake is very skewed because it was a different time, a different circumstances. So if you look at the game itself, the fact that it was the 4th best selling game of the month for a good while is a good deed. I think that's a lot of great feats, but I guess that doesn't pay bills. So, you know, what do I know? What do I know? The release of Kiryu's statement today, then it is the first official acknowledgement of the game's sales. Still, it's unclear by how much the game underperformed, and Square Enix is notorious for its high expectations, which is something that they need to fix very soon. Much as also happened since the financial report, finally Final Fantasy XIV expansion Dawn Trail has released in July, which will likely have had a positive impact on the overall company profits, which makes sense. It's an on-running game, it's a live service game, a lot of people play it, it's on a lot of platforms, so it makes sense why that did really well. So it's like, it's like comparing apples to oranges. It's like a different circumstances. Secondly, Final Fantasy 16 was released yesterday on PC, continuing the company's push towards multi-platinum releases. And while Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth remains PS5 console exclusive for now, it is likely it will follow Final Fantasy 7 Remake with a PC release in the future. Could these games also come to Xbox? Final Fantasy 14 producer and director Naoki Yoshida, I hope I said that right, I probably didn't, and I apologize for that, told Eurogamer the company would like to further deepen the relationship with Xbox gamers following the release of the MMORPG on Microsoft consoles, which is a great thing. More people playing the game, more people are happy, more people will buy your stuff. It's a known fact. So like, it doesn't really need to be exclusives anymore, except for the first party games, but even those games are starting to come to PC. Well, not Switch games, but you know, PS5 and all that. So either way, I really am sad that the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth isn't selling the way it should, because I feels like that game is honestly the best game that came out this year, following Stellar Blade and then Visions of Mana for me. But like, it's still one of those things that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth managed to pull off something so magical, and it's such a fun, jam-packed game that more people should play it. And it feels like the only reason why a lot of people didn't play it is because they don't have a PS5 or can't get a PS5. And at the time, you know, Final Fantasy Remake Part 1 was on the PS4, and then it got shifted to the PS5. So a lot more people had a lot more access to the game. So there's different circumstances, different times. So it is a skew on what happens, but that is what it is. Let me know how you guys feel about it. Did you guys play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? If you didn't, you should. If you wasn't able to because you didn't have a PS5, let me know. But let me know how you feels about that in the comments down below. Moving into the next story, we're going to talk about Kingdom Hearts 4, the game that probably won't come out until 2035, probably for a very long time. But Tatsuya Nomura, Then let's move into some Kingdom Hearts 4 news, which Nomura has said that he is currently making Kingdom Hearts 4 with the intention of bringing the story that is heading towards the series conclusion, which is so surprising that we're hearing that. I feels like that should have already done that with 3, but I guess there was more to say. He says he only has a few more years left until he retires, and it has become a thing of whether he will retire first or the series will be concluded first. And I'm assuming that it's his project, his baby. It's been on his baby since the PS2. And I'm sure he would like to finish and wrap up the Kingdom Hearts story before he retires, because I'm sure he wouldn't want no one else to handle it, because, you know, it's his vision and he wants to see it have a proper ending. And I would like that too. As a long-running fan of Kingdom Hearts 2, I mean, you can see my Kingdom Hearts 2 poster up there for Kingdom Hearts in general. I love the whole franchise in general, and it was a long wait for Kingdom Hearts 3. Almost 13 years we had to wait for that game, and then to wait for Kingdom Hearts 4, which probably won't come out until like 2027 at least, maybe. It's going to be a while since we have this, and if he has intentions for another game, which is Kingdom Hearts 5, who knows when we'll get that game. I really am fearful of when that game actually comes out, but I'm happy that he wants to conclude the story. I hope like it does come to that, and I hope he is able to reach the conclusion that he wants with his story and is able to end the story as he intends it to be. I just hope it doesn't butcher the series in the end, because like 3 kind of left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths after what happened. Sure, they did the after story and the DLC that cleaned up a lot of stuff, but the initial game itself was not as good. Like story-wise, everything was very confusing. There was not a lot of things that made a lot of sense. I mean, you had to play, and then you had to play all these other versions. I mean, I'm not going to explain the whole history of Kingdom Hearts because I'm pretty sure you know by now, but hopefully it does come to a beautiful ending with him in the head seat, because it would be nice to see all the games be concluded with him on board. And if this is his final series that he works on before he retires, then that will be a beautiful wrap up if it goes well. So let me know how you guys feel about that. At the most part, it seems like it is what we are expecting, that Square Enix just has super high expectations for games. Because I feels like $3 million sale price is a huge deal. You know, like that's a lot of people who played that game, and it just released on PC, so it probably will sell even more, even though there are reports that the game's not performing well because of graphical problems or hardware problems, but I feels like they did get that fixed. And then when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it feels like that game was the top 4th best-selling game for a long time. And as I already stated before, that, you know, when it comes to remake, I feels like they have to have a different lens for that game, because it came out at a different time when more people were inside and able to play games, and it was on the PS4, which was more access to a lot more people than the PS5. This game was specifically PS5 only, and not a lot of people have a PS5, so I feels like in the expectations of that, it makes sense of why it didn't sell as well as Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't know why Square Enix does this to themselves. I feels like they would learn by now, especially when they're talking about like games like Foam Stars. It's like, okay, Square Enix, what are we talking about here? Like Foam Stars obviously was out the get-go was going to not sell well because it was already a Splatoon ripoff, and it just didn't seem like it was going to be that fun of a game. I kind of completely forgot about it, honestly. It came out and no one talked about it. At least no one I seen play it. So it's not a surprise that that game is not doing well. And then again with Final Fantasy 16, even though I didn't play it myself, I saw a lot of people talk in high praise about that game, not to the margin that I felt like with Remake, but it still came out to a really good amount of people who loved the game. For me personally, I just don't really like the Game of Thrones medieval kind of vibe that they went. The direction for it just wasn't all that good. And for me personally, I just feels like the direction of the art direction could have been a lot better. Even though it wasn't for me, doesn't make it a bad game. Like, you know, that just makes it just wasn't for me. But for a lot of people, it was good for those people. And it just feels wrong that Square Enix feels like it didn't perform that well. I don't know, it just feels weird. But anyway, that is pretty much the video, and that's the review. Let me know how you guys feel about all this information. This is really fresh and new. You know, even about Kingdom Hearts, even though it wasn't the huge major focus of this video, but I did want to talk about it because it is part of Square Enix and part Final Fantasy. And I do love Kingdom Hearts, and I hope to play 4 and 5 in a reasonable amount of years and not far in the future where I'm an old man before I get to play them, because it does feel like that's what's going to be the case. Maybe it might not be, because it seems like the way that Nomura is talking that he wants to do, there's 4 and there's going to be another game to conclude the whole series, and only time can tell. You know, only time can tell what that will happen. But maybe 4 might be the end all be all. I feels like it should. I feels like 4 should just be the end of the Kingdom Hearts franchise and just leave it at that. Because, like, you know, when you consider like voice actors, writers, and all this other stuff, like, things cannot last forever. I mean, sad, but it's true. Either way, that is the news and breakdown I wanted to talk about. I wanted to bring more Final Fantasy VII talks to the channel because it's my favorite game to talk about, and anytime I do get to talk about it, I want to talk about it. So if you guys do enjoy this Final Fantasy content and want to see more of it, let me know by hitting the like button, subscribing for more, because I am trying to hit 10K by the end of the year, and with your help I could definitely do that. So if you would do me a favor and hit the like button, subscribe for more, and I will be back with another video real soon. Bye me.